proven in the Ogaran Basin. I will be discussing that particular source rock in quite a lot of detail because it shows up with really interesting characteristics on the seismic. I think you will be excited to see that. And then of course we can have lower Cretaceous and upper Cretaceous source rocks. So a lot of source rocks that could be working and generating hydrocarbons here offshore Somalia. So just to put you in context, these are geological basins. These are not related to states, and I will show a map at the end which shows the states and it shows all the prospectivity, how it's distributed along the states. But here we have three geological basins that have been named from north to south, the Obiak, Oriol, and Jubalamo Basin, and they are based on gravity anomalies first, these low gravity anomalies, but of course we have confirmed them with our seismic because we can actually see these basins with our seismic. I'm going to start in the north. I'm going to start in basins in the north. This is one of our beautiful seismic lines in the north, and this is actually a PSDM line, 190 kilometers. And one of the surprises that came with interpreting this data is that gravity modeling, because we integrated gravity, we integrated all the data that we had available, is predicting that we have a continental frost block that extends up to 200 kilometers offshore. So we have all those tilted fault blocks that we can see on our seismic to confirm what the gravity modeling is also telling us. And you see where we've marked S, that would be the Karoo source rock. So now I'm taking you to the pre-rift Permo-Triassic times that we've already identified. We have the right conditions for source rock deposition, and here, colored in brown, are where we expect to see the source rocks, because we see those characteristics. If we move up the stratigraphic column, we've now drifted Madagascar away from Somalia, and we have this shallow marine restricted conditions, and so we would expect that in the Sindrift half gravens, we would see the source rocks. And there you can see in that sort of browny color, orangey color, S for source rock, so a shallower source rock. So we're moving up the stratigraphic column, we have identified two potential source rock sequences. What lies above these source rock sequences? We do have one well. We have integrated all the well data that we had in Somalia. This one well was drilled offshore, the Mareg-1 well. And what it does is it provides us some information that we do have carbonates up on the shelf. And when you take this carbonate sequence, you can see how this carbonate sequence continues into the outboard. And there where you see that red line, that is actually a carbonate buildup. But this is a dip line, so carbonate buildups are not very clear on dip lines. I'm going to show you the intersecting line so you can see how we actually came up with the conclusion that that was a carbonate buildup. This is the intersecting line, this is a strike line. Now you can see this really interesting, very, very extensive carbonate buildup complex that is just above the breakup on conformity. So the great news here is I have just shown you that we have a couple of source rock sequences, and we are very confident that those source rocks are going to be in place. And look at where the source rock sits, right below this carbonate complex. That is great news for that carbonate complex. I'm going to show you a bit more on that. I'm also going to show you the resource evaluation that we have carried on that particular carbonate complex. But you can also see that overlying it is this sort of opaque sequence overlying that blue carbonate buildup. That is probably acting as a seal. We have the perfect play system here, and I will show you the resources associated with that and some of the de-risking that we have done. Because you shouldn't blindly believe me that that is a carbonate, but I will show you more evidence. And what happens outward of this carbonate? There is a very interesting sequence. If you follow that same sequence outward, you'll see this sort of low frequency, opaque sequence that we have interpreted as deep marine sapropels. We have proposed that those are deep marine sapropels. But this is a really big question. Is this a valid source rock? Do I have a way of convincing you that this is a valid source rock? And I think we do. In 2011, Loseth et al., a group of Equinor, well, then Statoil employees, published this amazing paper that has changed the way we work in spectrum. And the question, it was a very simple question. Can carbon source rocks be identified on seismic data? And it's a very fair question because we have, as an industry, really focused on just looking at the reservoir and identifying the reservoir and looking for amplitude anomalies associated with the reservoir, which is very fair because after all, we want accumulations. But seismic data holds amazing clues and a lot of information on the source rock. And why is that? Because a source rock with keratin will have a reduction in velocity and density. And what does that mean? Contrast in acoustic impedance. Whatever lithology is overlying a shale will always show you a decrease in acoustic impedance, a high amplitude anomaly. And because the shales and micas are aligned horizontally, you will get an increase in the velocity in the horizontal direction. That gives you an isotropy. So for those of geophysicists in the room, that's an ABO type 4 anomaly dimming in the fire angle stack. Two key indicators, two key criteria that if we find them, we can be pretty certain that we have a source rock. This was tested in the North Sea with a Kimerich clay, a world-class source rock. We tested it in Namibia because we have up to 12 wells that have encountered the active source rock. 3 drilled by HRT in the deeper water. You may notice a sort of low amplitude, low frequency, transparent sequence there, which looks a little bit similar to the one I showed you in Somalia. That is the active source rock that has been drilled by wells. And here are all the criteria working in Namibia. So we used Namibia as a test, as a proof of concept before we went to Somalia. If I came to Somalia and I showed you, oh, we carried this out in Somalia, you would probably say to me, well, but you don't have any wells. How do you know that what worked in the North Sea is going to work in Somalia? But we went to Namibia, proved the concept, it works there, you've got the low frequency zone, you've got all the criteria, and then we came to Somalia. That source rock that I showed you, that would be equivalent to the Oranda source rock, that mid-Jurassic source rock, or late Jurassic source rock, sorry, meets the criteria. Look at the top of the source rock. The top of the source rock is a reduction in acoustic impedance. This is SEG negative polarity, so a black is a peak, it's a soft kick. Sorry to confuse those who use American polarity. And you see at the base, we have the expected response. It's an increase in acoustic impedance. You see there, so it meets the first criteria. Now we look at the amplitude with variation with angle. So that's the near angle stack on your left, that's the far angle stack on your right, and you see the arrows are pointing to the source rock, and you see how the amplitude dims in the far angle stack. So this is just by sight, but I'm going to show you, we have done our full, complete ABO analysis, and you can see there that you've got the background, and you've got this very clear trend right here, which is the source rock, and that's your ABO type 4 anomaly. So 2 of the criteria have been met. This is looking like a very good quality source rock, because you need good quality, you need keratin in the source rock, otherwise you don't get this response. And then the third, a really interesting one, again from the LOSEF paper, is that a change in amplitude will actually indicate a change in TOC. And look at this is great, because you've got lower amplitude in the relatively shallower section. And when you get into the deeper section, which is where you would expect a higher source rock accumulation and higher organic content, you've got higher amplitude. So that fits in perfectly with what we would expect. So it seems to be a good indicator also of where is my amplitude. And look at the frequency. The frequency is also a low frequency zone. We have a source rock here that is meeting all the criteria that has been proven in the North Sea and in Namibia, and it also makes sense. So we believe that we have a very strong case for some very good source rocks. So what we did is, in collaboration with Leeds University, we carried out a very detailed basin modeling. Now this basin modeling, I haven't shown you everything we've done in Somalia, but we have actually looked at cross-soil architecture, have divided up the whole of the basin, the offshore, into different cross-soil architectures, and we have taken those into account, and we have looked at sediment overburden. We've done the basin modeling through time. Here, for a couple of source rocks, pre-rift and syn-rift source rock, and we are not using shell colors, we are using normal standard colors. So green is oil. And look at both of the source rocks are giving us oil in the north, because that's the overburden that we have. And this is calibrated with well data that we have. So we did take into account the geothermal gradients from the well data. Both of these source rocks should be generating oil, and the one that I just showed you is exactly above the thin rift, so that would be generating oil. So that complex that I showed you. Now, this is a carbonate buildup. Do we believe her? Do you believe me? So we didn't just stop there, because we think this is such an extensive